Welcome everybody to Cycle Jerks Podcast, episode 125. Joined as always by the lovely and talented Dave Dalton. Hello, Dave.
Well, hello. How are you? As always, except last week.
Yeah. Well, and we've had Chris on the podcast now. This is the third appearance, and he filled in for you when you were out. And but now he's in as a proper guest.
We have him on the hot seat. He's on the hot seat.
That's right. Yeah. Welcome, Chris.
Well, no, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to see you all again.
Last time, before you co-hosted, we had you on. You were in the throes of running a very successful bike shop in Castro Valley, Eden Bicycles, and since then, you sold your store, much to my chagrin, to one of Giant's key competitors, Trek Bicycle. So,
well, wait, back up. I wasn't part of the podcast. So when you were on, Chris, that was pre the Trek deal.
As a guest, when I was on, I was pre-Trek deal, and I don't even think I could. I think we were just kind of maybe touching on it at that time. So
yeah, I don't know that we did. That was all the way back to episode 41. You know, that's like in the early days.
Man, time flies. Holy where does it go? Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we talked about Chris's race career and battling the Reebok boys in the junior category and all the challenges there, and then his quick ascension to a Pro 1-2.
Yeah.
So, so we did talk bike shop too, but I don't believe anything was on the table back then. But
or it was, and you just didn't know about it, Mike.
It could be. Could be.
Yeah,
there are a lot of secrets. I'm full disclosure all the time, open kimono, whatever you want to say. And it hurts when my retailers hide things from me. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, business is business.
Well, but it was true. I mean, it was like you were probably one of the hardest people to not tell, because not only are we a business, you and I do business together, or we did do business together, but we had a long time friendship. So, not being able to talk to your friend or really anybody else too, it
tough
eats you
spot.
up.
Tough spot.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what?
Well, I'm just gonna say though, but I follow you on Instagram, Chris, and it's like Phil Guyman, the worst retirement ever. I'm not saying I don't know that.
Well, I think Chris does a great job of balancing, even in retail. I mean, I felt like you did a pretty great job balancing family life and work life, even though you were working a lot. But you still, you obviously have a very close relationship with your kids and your wife, and so you did a good job with that. But in retirement, it does seem like there's a lot more family trips and travel, and it's awesome, But let's go back to the decision to sell the store. What we had just come out of COVID, this wild run where it was just so taxing in so many different ways, but also pretty great in a lot of ways. But coming out of COVID, what was your thoughts? With the store at that point? Was it just like, man, now's the time to get out, or I'm burnt out, or is it now the value's really high because I have these increased sales? Maybe now's the time to step out. Can you kind of talk about that thought process?
Yeah. Well, like COVID, like for a lot of us in the industry, was just a crazy time. And, we were, I don't want to say fortunate, but we just, I'd recognized that, things were going to go bonkers, and they did. So we were just ordering bikes and parts that we knew were going to be in demand because this thing wasn't going away quickly.
Yep.
So I think we got ahead of that, and we were able to get a lot of inventory where maybe some other shops might have struggled, not getting behind the ball, or getting in front of it rather. So we just embraced the load, and and it really came, everyone kind of suffered during COVID with something either negative. And even though we had a positive outcome because, you know, we were generating so much more in sales, it took a physical toll for sure. I think that was the biggest thing. You know, I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
And when things kind of settled down, you could see that they were starting to go backwards or negative. Excuse me. And you know, a friend of mine had reached out that she had just sold her stores, and you know, asked how are you doing, and you know, Val, who's in Florida, she was really instrumental in just kind of helping me kind of come to that decision that, you know, hey, this might be something you want to look at. The shop's value is as high as it's ever going to be, and which is true.
Yep.
And that was really kind of the tipping point. You know, I just was not really in a good headspace either, I think, at that time. You know, and like to your point earlier, you know, balancing before COVID, like work and family life, but you know, the other part that you can't do everything, right? So I wasn't really riding my bike very much. I kind of lost that enthusiasm to ride my bike as much as I used to. Um, so I had to balance, you know, family was first, you know, so I had to do family and the business, and those were the priorities. So
Yeah.
It I don't want to say it must have come on quickly, right? But it must, but I mean, you went full steam ahead. You were expanding the store and, you know, what you took over the space, you were doing construction. So you kind of must have had this vision of grow, 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 right? If you had, even if pre-COVID, if you had any inkling of selling, would you have gone through that process? Or so
well,
did it come on relatively quickly, or?
I think that was kind of part of the master plan, actually, like
Oh,
making the shop more attractive to to a potential suitor.
fuck, you're smart.
Well,
Uh,
smoke and mirrors, baby, smoke and mirrors.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I'm dealing with a little chest congestion right now. But the 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 COVID, like to your point, there were definitely winners and losers at retail with COVID. And you were one of the winners. You jumped on early. You got the orders in the system. And while we didn't deliver everything that you wanted, you did better than most of the dealers in my territory in terms of supply. The
Right.
but it, like you say, winners and losers, in a sense. If you won the supply race, you still were faced with tremendous challenges because the demand was so high. The load on your staff was intense, and
Right.
you had turnover. Some people could handle it, some people couldn't. So it's like getting enough people to manage all the business that was at hand. And I know that that was a real struggle for you, you know, and I know out
Yeah.
here we have, you know, these Facebook and Google have these bike shop campus things, and they're just paying people like wild, uh,
Right.
wild salaries for their experience level. And so it's just really challenging to get good bicycle people. Um, and at a time when the demand is so great, you just want to be delivering, you know, and
Right.
um, yeah. So I know that
Let's back up.
that's a big part of it, you know.
Back up though. Who was the loser in the bike shop? I mean, I mean,
Well, there were
I,
shops that
I mean,
didn't.
other than me, like closed before the COVID
Yeah,
thing,
if you could
which,
have
you
just
know,
hung on just a little
yeah,
longer.
I know, if I'd only had a crystal ball, but you know, there were some other shops that, you know, that well, anyone that I spoke to, you know, business boomed. Now they may not have done as well as Chris, if especially as Chris said, if you didn't get ahead of it and order back stock and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you know, there, I don't know, maybe or they're losers or they just weren't as successful as others during COVID. I don't know.
There were definitely losers during COVID, and there were dealers that at least from our perspective, we closed a bunch of dealers because they were, smaller accounts that had, they just weren't great situations, maybe in some scenarios. But then also there were dealers that are very conservative by nature, and they were not willing to, go big, so to speak, with their forecasting. And they continued to treat their suppliers like their vending machines, but the vending machines were empty, and all this product was going to the people that put it out there, put the orders in the system, and we're playing ball. And it was really frustrating I would say for the first year of COVID, the numbers were insane. Like I would be just like, for an example, I would have, let's say, $1,500 hardtail. I had a dealer that took 15 extra larges. One dealer. 15 extra larges of a $1,500 hardtail, because that's all they could get at the time. And so, I mean, in normal times, that might be a 5-year supply for a large dealer. But, so, and then it got to a point where the dealers that had the vision and forecasted and put the orders in, it got to a point where they were like, hey, I'm not gonna take these, I'm not gonna take those. And as a rep, it was exciting for me, because it's like, oh, thank God, now I can get some bikes to these other dealers that don't have anything. And then I call them up, I go, hey, I got a bunch of extra smalls and extra larges, and these, and they'd be like, great, I'll take them. Just, right now it's like, you can't give that stuff away. So
I know. I mean, the one story that, I mean, there's a million of them, but I working in a shop at that point, and there's a family in there, and they're a family of 4, and they're buying these random bikes. And I finally said, like, I'm not, based on how you said you're riding, I don't know that this is the right bike for you, and it's definitely not the right size for your wife. And they're like, I don't care, we leave for Tahoe tomorrow, we need 4 bikes. I mean, it was like, what?
I mean, all the conventional ways of dealing with your customer, and trying to understand what your customer's needs were, and finding the right bike, and maybe that process of making them, there's a whole process to the sale, right? Like you're building a relationship,
parking lot.
And it was more like they come to the door and they can't even come in the shop, so that's awkward. And they're like, do you have this bike? And I'm like, yes, we have it. And they're like, well, I'm not really sure. And it's like, okay, well then move aside, because that guy right there, he wants it and he's ready to take it right now, And so it was, although it was fruitful in terms of making money, it wasn't very satisfying in terms of the relationship that we were used to building with customers. So that was kind of gone.
Well, and for those of you listening and not watching, Dave, it's 6:51 in the morning, and I believe Dave just polished off a Diet Coke. So
second
Diet Coke, 6:51.
You and Chris Cover.
It's Diet Pepsi, by the way. And I just started my 3rd.
Good Lord. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. And now the race is on to decide, am I going to make it to the end of this without having to pee?
All right. Well, back to our guest now. And it did really get into a weird time in selling bikes, and not really selling bikes. It became more like a procurement. You were just, many times the customer was not discerning whatsoever, like Dave was saying. And, but there were a couple times, thankfully Giant during COVID, they mandated us to stay home as outside reps. They did not want us traveling. They wanted us managing our back orders and working with retailers over the phone and not being in the stores. A lot of the stores wouldn't allow you. Some of the stores were, they had closed storefronts, and they would only let person at a time. Everybody was managing it differently, and they didn't want us out there in the fray when there was so much uncertainty about COVID. But there were a few times where I had these warranty episodes of some kind of random thing, and the deal, I had to go look at something or go assess or help a dealer with a process. And so I remember one time I went out, and I won't mention the dealer, but I went in the store. They had 8 bikes, 8 on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like a 3,000 square foot store, and they were it was one of those dealers like I was talking about, where they're just very conservative. And yeah, they were definitely a loser in the struggle. I mean, I think, they made it through, and they're doing fine today. So maybe it all worked out in the end, but retailers like Chris and others saw this huge spike in their business. Yeah, I could see where that would be if you're kind of at a point where you're considering maybe it's time to get out, and that kind of forced your hand a little bit, both by working so much and then the value of the store being so high because of this revenue that it's generating. Be like, well, maybe.
But let's do the timeline though. So it's April 2020, right? Because that's kind of when, maybe a little bit before that, but COVID hits, right? And in the bike shops, probably what, April? Because I think I went to work at my buddy's in May. And again, let me just say this, Chris. I would have liked to come to work for you, but logistics
we couldn't get them. Dang it.
Logistics were just just whatever. But so that's about, the shit hits the fan like April, May, right? And when did it kind of, I don't want to say it was over, because will we ever be over? But when would you say that like the world opened up again? I've so lost track of it.
I mean, I don't even know if I can really recall either. It was quite a while. I mean, definitely through the summer, we were still not letting people in the store. So it was maybe in the fall.
Well, but I didn't leave my buddies until about a year ago, right? It was September a year ago. Things had started to slow, but that was still okay. So at what point during this 2.5 or 3 year process did you say, all right, I got to think about tapping out? You said you spoke to your friend, and
so God, that was see, we were out, we closed, we transitioned in 23. So it was about May of 22 when we kind of started the conversation with other suitors. And I think even just before then, I was just not having it. Like I was dropping subtle hints, right? Like we bought the place in Nevada City, and we were just kind of lining things up for what we saw was coming. And I thought for sure Stu would catch it, but he didn't.
Because they made him work. They made him work from home. He couldn't come see it. So,
but by that point, the store was opened, and people were coming in. But I was definitely recognizing that things aren't moving as quickly. The inventory numbers aren't leveling out to what they should be with regards to the sales are. We were definitely starting to become way over inventoried, and you can see people were starting to discount. So I could see it was coming,
right?
The glut.
So Chris, you probably, I mean, your network is pretty big in terms of, because I know you've been doing this for so long. I assume you still talk to guys. I've heard Mike's opinion on it, but are you close enough now to know what's the temperature out there? Like, how are the retailers doing? How are some of your old friends doing? I mean, I know there was at least a rock bottom. Are we still there, or starting to rebound?
Yeah, I haven't talked to some of the bigger players, like I developed some good friends in some of the NBDA, National Bicycle Dealer Association, and that network. And there's definitely some retailers who are doing okay in key areas, but I still think for the most part, the dollars aren't there for most folks.
Right.
Like
it's a little
Because
weird. The
Mike, you had said it not too long ago, and I've used this term, but I mean, yeah, there was a point at which you said to me, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've never seen it this bad,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which is a big statement.
yeah. But
Yeah.
the weird thing is like the dollars are still kind of there because of e-bikes. So, but it's just the overall inventory turns, the amount of inventory that's being held at retail versus the sell through. It's just, it's upside down right now. But the dollars, depending on the market, but I have some dealers that are actually, dollar on dollar, they're doing as good or better than last year. But from a supply standpoint, you were asking about the timeline for us, for me, my territory, the last COVID artificial bubble month for me was May of 22. In
Okay.
June, there was a precipitous, like literally June was about a third of what I did in May. And since that point, it's kind of been hovering like that. So there
Right.
was this huge bubble, and then May of 22 was the last big month of COVID sales, at least on a supplier side.
Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
started to
Well,
shut off prior to that at retail, but dealers were still some dealers were not as quick to respond to the the market kind of slowing down a little bit, but then it just seemed like it just fell off a cliff in June.
Right. And it's
yeah.
just that there's a change coming. The industry is changing, right? And
Yep.
we're seeing, with COVID and this kind of a shakeout, either positively or negatively. E-bikes becoming, I mean, you've seen it, e-bike sales, both of you guys that have accelerated through COVID, right? So that just really pushed that to the forefront.
Yep.
And dealer direct, to consumer, and there's all these different models that are appearing that may have been a little slower to come had this not happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was going to go backwards a little bit and talk because I certainly felt your pain. There's no way I could have felt your pain. I mean, as an owner of the store, right? I mean, I know just working in a store, you know, I would ride my bike in there, and at 9:30, I've cleaned up and I'm look out the front door. We don't open till 10, and there's a fucking line already, and
Right.
that would go until, like, literally you had to lock the door so people would stop coming in during COVID, and you just working in the store, you'd go home completely fried, right?
Right.
And I didn't have the pressure of owning it, right? So I can't even imagine, and worrying about staffing, and I can't imagine what you went through. But
Yeah.
looking forward, I say you brought up some good points. Maybe I'm getting too far ahead, but as you guys look into the crystal ball, it is weird, right? But like, what is the future of the IBD? I mean, that's the thing that kind of, it still worries me, even though I don't own the store. But I just can't imagine a world where it's all direct to consumer. I mean, I mean, they can say that they ship these bikes all already built, and why were anyone that bought a bike from Canyon always coming in and asking us to stop their brake from rubbing, right? So,
Right.
so I don't know what, then you've got that other thing happening now where it's the big guys are coming in and opening their own stores, like what's happened with you. It's a Trek store, right? I mean,
Right.
we had, Jesus, from within striking range of my house, within 20 miles, there are 4 Trek stores, right? One has since closed, but
Yeah.
like, what do you think of the independent guy going forward? And what do they have to do to survive? Is that pretty deep?
Ooh. Yeah. That's a tough one, but I was just talking to Greg at Bike Connection the other day, and we were both in agreement that the IBD is not going to go away. You are definitely going to
Can't.
need somebody to touch the bike. You're going to have to need that interaction with like a mechanic working on your bicycle. And but maybe there's a certain part of that experience that will go away, in terms of what people are buying online and versus buying in the shop. and and some of those customers can be a little bit difficult to deal with, when it comes to price sensitive things. And maybe that frees you up from having to negotiate with somebody on a losing
Right.
proposition,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
people forget it's like you're a business. You're here to make money, and if you can't make money, you've got to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the IBD is secure. I think that, I mean, I have a number of these Trek stores in my territory, and, I mean, Trek's a great company, John Burke, very smart man, but these stores don't deliver at retail. They just don't have the service, that the IBD becomes a good IBD in a market full of Trek and specialized stores becomes the go-to because, one, they're not completely biased. They're independent, and they have, even if they're dedicated to a primary brand, they probably have 3 or 4 brands under the roof, and they have good mechanics, and they put an emphasis on service. Most successful IBDs have quality service. And so that's the thing that really seems to be coming up short with these. They come off more like showrooms than bike shops. And so, yeah, I think the IBD is going to be secure. And also, to Chris's point, we're not selling vacuum cleaners, like you just buy a vacuum cleaner, that's it, you have it at your house, and you're selling an experience. Well, maybe the vacuum cleaner salesman is selling experience also. He's selling the carpet cleaning experience. But
Hey,
but
that Electrolux guy that knocked on my door, my mother bought from him. It was an experience for
oh
sure.
yeah, we had a Kirby, same kind of thing. But like the bicycle is something that, if you position it, you get the person the right type of bike for what they want to do. Hopefully they're enjoying it, they're riding it a couple of times a week. There's this relationship that they have with the equipment, and then in an ideal world, with the bike shop that they bought it from. And a lot of that relationship involves service after the initial sale, and that's where these shops just don't stack up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even at the IBD, I mean, I feel like there's a lack of, whether it's maybe the IBD doesn't have the funds to train your staff properly. And, I mean, and we did the best that we could. We were far from being perfect at it, but, I like being on this side now, not in the industry. And I mean, just think about your own shopping experiences, right? Like going to a store, like getting in your car, driving your car to a store, finding parking, going to the store to ask if they have something, and just to be told no,
Right.
and then you've got to leave, right? Like
Yeah.
where I live now in Nevada City, there's 2 great bike shops there, and they're both super friendly, and they've got good product, and they've got a good thing going. But I go into one of the stores and I ask for a Wahoo cadence sensor, and they're like, no, we don't have it. It's like, okay, so that was the end of the conversation. So I drive to the next store, and I ask them, do you have this cadence sensor? And he's like, no, we don't have it, but I can order it for you. So that's now the shop I go to buy,
Right.
Right.
to get whatever help I need, because
Just the second part of it, right? Just
it's the
I can
second
order
part
for
of
you.
it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I don't want to drive around all over the place trying to find something. And so the IPDs who are just too busy to, take it to the next step or the next level, I feel are either going to lose out, but they're also changing. They're not making it a good experience for the consumer, right?
Yes.
And that's the way I think the industry is going to keep those consumers coming back, is providing an experience.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree. I just, how many times I mean, and I tried to have as inventory, right? So that we didn't have that. No, I can order it from you, right? So,
Right.
because then, we are in such an online world that, then, if you sometimes, not always, most of the customers were understanding and say, great, when can you have it? But there was that percentage that would say, well, I can order it online too. I don't need you. That's why I came, and it's like, because that's kind of the mindset here. And I don't know, I never knew how to overcome that, because there's no way I could have 30 Wahoo cadence sensors in stock. Right. I could have one. And unfortunately, if I had sold it yesterday, I'm not going to have another one till tomorrow. Right. So
it's a hard balance. I mean, it's tough.
Well, back to Chris's consumer experience, one of the things that I always admired about, I felt like Eden would go above and beyond for the customer, even if the customer was that customer that was prone to buying stuff online, because there's still a lot of mistakes can be made. And especially nowadays, I mean, geez, just brake hose, the specifics of a brake hose, and the customer is going to go home and try to figure it all out, and off the information that's cobbled together on the internet, good luck. So I know you would, and sometimes you'd be building a bike and you'd say, and the customer say, oh, well, I'll just get my kit. And you would take them right to the computer and help them and say, well, let me make sure you get the right stuff, because you're going to bring all this stuff to me for me to build it. Let's go through this together, and we'll make sure you're going to get the right stuff. And sometimes maybe you could coax them into just doing the business with you, but other times you would just help them determine the proper equipment. And even though that's painful because you want it all, providing a real high level consumer experience, to where it's like, hey, this guy is working with me, understands my motivations. And so that's a great way to build client retention. Whereas a lot of shops would be like, go buy your stuff wherever, and good luck.
It's hard not to take it personal. It's hard to not take it personal. It's like, everyone that I know in the bicycle industry, I mean, it's a labor of love. I mean, people do it because they love the sport. They want to share it with other people. And it's hard not to take those scenarios personally. We had a customer come in once and asking about Zip wheels, and Galen, who was helping him at the time, Galen is so smart and retains so much, and educated the heck out of this guy. And then he comes back 3 weeks later and said, hey, just want to let Galen know, thanks, I got these wheels online. It's like,
oh man,
just very oblivious.
I'll one up you if you're there, but it's not, and I have to be careful what I say here, because I still ride with this person. I consider this person a good friend, and it was actually a very loyal customer. But I was on my way, we had closed, and I was on my way to a banquet for the San Ramon Valley mountain bike team. And I'm literally pulling in the driveway of the coach's house, and my phone rings. And it's somebody that calls and says, hey, I got a problem with my bike, and I have a Century tomorrow. I don't know what to do. And I said something about the seat post. So I went back over there, stopped what I was doing, just made my excuses why I couldn't go, went back to the shop, met this person in the shop, and his seat post was fucked. There's no way we could fix this, right? And I'm not even a good mechanic, but I'm like, even if the best mechanic was here, we don't have this part, right? It's not going to happen. So he's like, oh man, I got the Century tomorrow. And I look at the guy and I went, and I gave him my bike. And literally this guy didn't even have to change his seat height, right? It was just a perfect fit, right? 2 weeks later, I'm on a bike ride. I look over and he's got a new bike he bought online. And it wasn't even, I never even got the courtesy of, hey Dave, I found this bike, can you match it? The inquiry was never even made. But Chris, to your point, you just got to be like, okay, well, then at some point he's going to need a tube or something. Like, you just have to embrace it. Right. And I took it personally, but as I said, I mean, I ride with the guy maybe once a week now, right? And he's a good guy, and ultimately was a loyal customer. And I think in part because I embraced it rather than push him away, and just said,
Right.
well, okay, I lost that battle, but I'll win some others, right? And I think that that's
Right.
just the world in which we live in.
Well, how
So
many stories could the three of us tell like that? You know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean? And it is
Yeah.
hard because it is so personal to us, you know,
yeah,
and yeah, I don't, it's just lost on the consumer, I think, you know. And when we look at ourselves as consumers, uh, I would like to think I'm a little different, maybe because I've lived this independent retailer life most of my life. And I do have I do have independent shops that I support, but I'm not a
hmm
huge consumer. You know, it's like if I go, you know, like Christmas shopping, I'm always trying to shop local and trying to keep my money in Livermore and do right by the local merchants that I appreciate.
yeah,
And so, but in general, I don't really buy that much other than bike stuff.
yeah.
You know, I
But
only
I
really
think we're
shop at Christmas.
I think that's part of our legacy, though, is because the like Chris, right? When you're going to that Nevada city, right? I have to imagine a part of it was I used to own a bike shop, and my first instinct is to support local, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, but you raise another thing too, which is another concern I have, and I think this touches on part of what we talked about before. Is I mean, how staffing must have been a fucking nightmare during COVID, but forget that now. Even now, there's such a demand. Everyone wants to hire somebody, but it's like there's such a small supply. And in terms of talented mechanics, that scares the shit out of me. I there's a very small number of places I would take my bike to be worked on right now.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Totally.
Yeah.
so and I just I don't know. So I don't know what your feeling on it is, but we talked about um, we talked with Steve Potts, last week, of the frame builder, right?
Right.
And this guy learned to he made his first bike in the machine shop of his high school, right? And my point of that is that where is that where is the honor in the trades these days, right? So I mean, become a bike mechanic is a it's a noble profession, right? It's a career,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And just as a carpenter or electrician, but where's that pool? Where are we drawing from? And I don't know. It's
Yeah. It's hard to find, dude. It's hard. It's hard to pay. I mean, it's hard to pay a good mechanic their value.
yeah,
Just, and I don't want to get into the whole thing about, margin in the industry, but
Yeah.
there's just it's hard to generate a margin from the bike industry to pay, someone in the Bay Area. Now that might be different in different areas. I don't really know. I don't talk to
yeah,
people that in depth in their area like that, but these guys have to know a lot, but then it's also, it takes a lot to manage those service guys because, you have someone who's been doing this a long time and they become very, very confident, maybe overconfident, and they think they know how to run the business versus
yeah,
being just focused on, hey, look, we need you in here doing this. And I know you're trying to do what you think is the best for the business, but your idea of running the business is not the same as the way I want to run the business. And, it's
Yeah.
my name on the store. It's my name attached to it.
right,
And it's
right,
my livelihood attached to this.
yeah,
So that's also difficult, but yeah, like you said, finding, you know, the qualified guys are leaving the industry because they
Right.
can't afford to,
Yeah, we talked about that with remember Chuck Davis we had on the podcast, who used to be a lead mechanic at Hank and Frank, and several of his mechanic friends are, in aerospace or in tech, and they love bicycles, but it just, they couldn't really make a go of it in the Bay Area, so they they still
Yeah,
have this love of bicycles, but they've moved on to other industries to,
Right.
get their home and get their foundation set up.
yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, I mean, that's a great question. If I lived in Ottumwa, Iowa, could I make it as,
Right.
could you provide for your family and, as a bike mechanic? And I hope someplace in the world you can, because as I said, I think it's a noble profession, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. Well, I mean, I've worked with I feel like some incredibly great mechanics in my career, you know, way better than I am, but not one of those was the breadwinner in the family. It was always
Right.
somebody else leading the charge, and
Yep.
that was just something they did, um, to
Sugar
keep them.
mama.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
well,
Yeah.
hey,
Well,
listen, I'll just say, that I believe in my heart of hearts, I was blessed to have two very, very, very talented, and I would say consider them among the best mechanics. I'm going to just say on the planet. I'm just going to say it, Matthias and Dan.
Yeah.
And Matthias wasn't a family man at the time. He was just lived on his own. So we sort of got by there, but Dan was the breadwinner. And that's, I think that was a constant source of struggle
yeah.
because he was. And it's just like at some point there was a ceiling at which I just couldn't go any higher. And, he packed up and he
Right.
went back to what went back to Washington. But I mean, that guy was gifted.
Yeah.
Right. And it's,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
is, yeah, you're right. It's a problem. And then
Well,
you're right.
Yeah.
There are other ones where I found, like, you find a guy and is like, oh, well, how's he making it? And you find out his wife is an attorney for some, for some big firm, and making all kinds of money so he can just continue to do what he's doing. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's just an equation, right? It's like, after you generate a net, I've got my payroll, I've got my rent, I've got, insurance. There's just not enough. It's hard to generate enough money after everything
yeah,
to
Yeah.
pay someone like Matthias or Dan or some of the other guys that I worked with, what you feel their value is or what they might feel their value is. It's not that they're not as valuable as they think they are. It's just doesn't work in the math.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
all that not that all being true, a bike mechanic is still a good career path for somebody, especially a young person that's looking to develop skills and learn business. We have there's an outfit out of Santa Cruz called Project Bike Tech, and they work with the high schools. There's several high schools around the Bay Area that have bicycle mechanic as a course, so like a ROP program. And
Right.
even with the challenges that are there, being a bike mechanic can lead to, as I just mentioned, the guys now they're in aerospace, not because they had the college training to be in aerospace, but because they had these mechanical skills that made them
Right.
attractive to an aerospace company or a tech company. And so the trick is, once you get a mechanic, is to keeping them,
yeah,
because they're coveted, and it's really the toughest hole to fill in the bike industry. We can get salespeople all day long, and not saying that they're great salespeople, but they can be trained much easier than a mechanic. It takes a particular type of
it's an
mind.
art.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
got to
Yeah, for
be
sure.
able to retain a lot of information. The standards keep changing over and over again. And, you can't just pluck a mechanic that was a great mechanic from the 90s. You can, and went off and did something. And then he comes back to the bike industry now. It's like, good luck. Because
Yeah, yeah.
where do I even
it's
start with you?
it's funny. It's funny you say that, because there was a mechanic that worked in a local bike shop, and this guy was really good. I mean, he was good, and he was in a, a bike shop around here for a long time, and you can ask anyone; they knew his name.
Mm-hmm.
We, I bumped into him out. We were doing a gravel ride. I bumped into him not too long ago out on the trail, and he was working for a charity. that they were just cobbling bikes together, and to donate to people in need. And he was out test riding a bike, and I don't know, somehow we got on the topic, and he goes, "Oh, no. When it comes to this hydraulic stuff, I don't even touch it."
Yeah.
And this was my go-to guy not too long ago. You're like,
Yeah, right.
wow, okay, we got a problem here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's changing fast. That's for sure.
And then just e-bikes too, I mean,
Yeah.
the classic bike mechanic, just there's so much knowledge that's just, absorbed through osmosis, just being
Right.
in the channel. Whereas if you just came at it cold, even with a rich history, you're going to be playing catch up for a very long time. And, fortunately, there are a lot of online tools now, YouTube. I know like a lot of the shops will use YouTube if they don't have the skilled mechanics, or even the skilled mechanics a lot of times will use YouTube, and there's a lot of really good content online.
A lot of bad content too, though.
There is.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I want to talk about e-bikes, and Mike and Chris, but I do want to bring up one thing, like you just mentioned it before, and it's relates to what I was talking about earlier, Project Bike Tech. Like, I think that's an amazing thing, right? I think of that is amazing. And so much so that when I first heard about it, I actually got an appointment with the principal of the San Ramon Valley High School team when I owned the shop, not San Ramon Valley School, principal of the high school in San Ramon Valley. I eventually get that out. And I went and talked to her about the possibility of getting a program like that into the school. And she was very polite, but clearly it was a deer in the headlights. Like, it was like a vocation you want to put, like, it was one of those things like, yeah, I could see how that would be. And, but it's like a 2 or 3 year process to get a curriculum. And she never went on to say that, oh, that would dovetail nicely into our auto mechanic program or our wood shop program, because at the end of the day, they didn't exist. Right. And so it was like, okay, so this is going nowhere, right? It's going nowhere, but it's because that mindset just doesn't exist, I think, right? So
right, yeah.
All the electives are going away from the schools.
That's the word I'm looking for. Electives, like
and like we had we had Charlie Kelly on, and we had Steve Potts, both from Marin, and they talked about their high school experience, and they had like amazing vocational opportunities in Marin at the time of the 70s and 80s, and those things have all gone away. And so there's a lot of talk about all this stuff in society about how Gen Z doesn't know how to do anything, or they can do social media and video games, but they're not going to fix a flat tire or whatever. But a lot of it's
at the end of the day, they're not all getting into Ivy League schools either. So that's the problem, right? So they're not all going to get into the top state schools, and they're not all of them are meant for college. So,
but even before college, though, they need to be exposed. They need to have these opportunities at high school to figure out what makes them tick. Like, like Chris, I know on the previous podcast, you mentioned that you didn't read high school books, but you read that Greg LeMond book on how to train, right?
Oh yeah, right.
So, but we all have these talents within us, or these interests within us, and if they could just be nurtured, you could then develop. And I think that at the high school level, it's just being neutered right now because the kids aren't given these opportunities. I took drafting. I took ceramics. I love ceramics. I took woodworking, auto shop. These were all different forays into potential career paths for me. I didn't take any of them, but I was at least able to experience those and figure out, like, I got into drafting and I realized, like, this is definitely not my thing at all, and so without those opportunities, though, I just think that, you know, we're seeing the results of that now all these years later.
Yeah.
I think
Spoken
working in the
about
bike
that.
shop is a good experience, though. You know, I
It
mean, I
is.
think uh, I always told my staff, like, you know, especially the young guys, like, you know, learning to work at retail is going to teach you skills that you're going to take with you forever. You're going to learn how to have conversations with people who you don't have you haven't established any kind of common interest with, other than they're here for a bike and you work in a bike shop.
Yeah.
You know, but learning how to have a conversation and um, uh, with the bike mechanics, you know, how many people will go to a college that they've got to work? You know, maybe they don't have the free ride that mom and dad are going to pay for. And, you know, going to a college town, it's perfect to get a job at a bike shop. I've got plenty of guys who
Absolutely.
went to work for us who went to college and then, you know, ended up working in the bike shop in their at the college that they work
Yeah.
or that they're going
I
to.
think you're
So,
right. I mean, that's definitely, that's absolutely, is that wherever they go, there's going to be a demand for them.
yeah,
Yeah.
we were on a vacation once and I ran into this guy who worked for Rolls-Royce, the airline division. And so we were just chatting and I was like, oh yeah, I own a bike shop. And he's just like, man, that was the best job I ever had.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
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 You know, of
Yeah.
course he couldn't afford to, you know,
To
to
keep
make as
it.
much as he's doing now, but
Darn it.
uh, you know, but it is a good experience. And and I think as an owner of a shop, you definitely recognize that people, you know, that they're just there for a certain time. So, you know, having a good experience with them, coaching them or training them, and then recognizing when that time is up and not being upset by it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, beyond the social dynamic of it for a young person, there's also the you know, problem solver part of it. You know, that's a big
Right.
part of what you do at the bike shop. And there's so many, you're dealing with people that have $12,000 road bikes, and you're dealing with people that are on a bike that could barely deserves to be on the road, and everybody in between. And, you know, there's a spoke or a spoke nipple or a cable end or whatever that needs to just get done. And you need to figure out how can I do this for this person, get them back on the road. And, you know, these are all different types of skills that, like you say, you take with you. There's the social part of it. You got to have that exchange with the customer to get to the nitty gritty of what they need. And then you got to have the back end of it to go into the shop, figure out, okay, I got this little part in this drawer with a bunch of random parts in it. I found the
Right.
exact piece, and now I'm going to, you know, fix it on this guy's bike, and now they're going to be on the road again. And yeah, so there's so many valuable lessons to be learned working retail. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is discouraging though when you go in these shops and, you know, I've told this story before, but where there's not even a mechanic at the shop. You
Right.
go in the shop and it's just like some barely educated salespeople,
Right.
and it's like, man, what kind of consumer experience is this providing? You know,
Right.
Yeah.
and
But you know, the industry is definitely, you know, can be a good place for people to make a career. And I, you know, like I'm one of those people. Like I, you know, grew up as kind of an introverted kid. I mean, I still am, just not a kid. Uh, but you know, like I remember working in a shop and I didn't want to talk to customers and I just wanted to wrench on bikes and you know, eventually worked into management and enjoyed talking to people. And you know, I mean, this industry has provided me with so many things, so many great friendships. I've traveled the world. I've been to Taiwan, you know, and toured the Giant Factory. We've been
yeah,
to France, to Italy. You know, we've traveled all over with this industry, and I don't have a college education, so you know, there is an opportunity for people to become successful at whatever they measure that at. But
yeah.
um, you know, it just takes work.
Yeah. And how many years was that, Chris, how many years did you have Eden?
We had Eden for 21 years. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was a gold standard for sure. I've said that before, and I mean it with all,
yeah,
you
thank
know,
you.
you don't make it 21 years unless you are. And it was, if I couldn't deliver something, I just said, go to Eden. It's just, you know, so.
Well,
well,
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good, there's a lot of good retailers out there. And, I've had the fortune of working with a ton of different retailers, in my experience growing up. And I don't have anything negative to say about any of those guys. They all ran fantastic businesses in their own
Yeah.
right. And, you know, um, and then to network with other retailers, across the country and learn how they operate, and, all that kind of networking has been extremely helpful.
Yeah. If you
All
look
right.
at your career, when I first met you were at Village Cyclery. And then you bounced around, and it was kind of an eclectic group of shops, right? So you went
Yeah,
from I've got the order out of whack, I'm sure, but there was Cycle Path, Livermore Cyclery,
right.
Cycle Sports,
Sports, right.
I think
Robinson.
Robinson, right?
Uh-huh.
So in that, if you just look at those stores, you got Cycle Path is like a pile them high, let them fly kind of shop. Huge footprint, lots of product at the time, and not a high end shop whatsoever. Then you go to Livermore Cyclery. Livermore Cyclery had a great operation, family run business.
Yeah.
And they were active in a lot of different ways in the sport. Then you leave there, you go to Cycle Sports. At the time, I think they had the Health Net Pro team, and Thierry's always got, like, the owner of that shop had a lot of different balls in the air, and
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of different setup there. And then Robinson's a super elite pro shop, and then you go and start your own. And that's just a great foundation to start. Just those alone is a great foundation for you to, like, figure out, like, okay, well, I know what I like about this, what I like about that, and I'm just going to take all of these things and try to fuse it in, and this is going to be my shop, you know?
Right.
And then I felt like over the years, I think that the thing that impressed me the most about you as an owner was that you would meet other retailers either through dealer events or traveling or whatever on these trips for these companies, and there would be these discussions about business, and you would just take a little part, you dig into, like, what's working for them, and yeah, hey, I can maybe incorporate this. And
Right.
I felt like you were always constantly just kind of pulling from here or there, and it just really helped build the shop to what it was.
Yeah. I mean, just not always wanting to learn more from other people. I just always really, really enjoyed, like, learning what other retailers were doing to make their business successful. And, maybe there's a lot of things you're just, it doesn't work in your market, and you recognize that, but other things they would, like, I met probably, I consider my mentor for many years was Kevin Schutte from
Yeah.
Bike and Hike.
Yeah.
Kevin had I think 4 stores in the Portland area, and you know he's just this calm, thoughtful person. So whenever he spoke, you wanted to listen. But here I am, this young, kind of rambunctious dude, just kind of maybe talking too much. And Kevin really, Kevin and I have this friendship, and I was always like, man, how does this, why does Kevin like me? Like, I'm just this young kind of, I'm not like Kevin, but we still text and message each other today. He's just like, I'm looking forward to seeing you and seeing how you grow. And, it's like
Yeah.
you make these friendships and these relationships, and, you just have to be open to taking in whatever these guys have to offer, because someone's out
Yeah.
there doing a better job than you.
I'm glad you brought up
Abs-
Kevin Schutte. He's one of those guys. He definitely, what a great mentor. That's the term that comes up when I think of Kevin Schutte, because even when you're just in a conversation with him, he's just got so much knowledge, and he just comes at it from not a pretentious or a condescending way at all. He's such a great conversationalist, but he's just dropping nuggets the whole time.
Oh,
And yeah, he's a special one. Is he still own a shop, and did he get out of the bike business,
yeah, he had owned some buildings and had 4 shops basically just sold everything off. He just closed it.
Okay.
And so he lives with his wife Laura in Sisters, Oregon. So that's near Bend.
Yeah.
And last I saw, he was in like Peru. So, you know,
Perfect.
he's
Yeah.
just like, just traveling and enjoying life. And he's definitely he's my favorite bike retailer for sure.
Yeah. That's cool.
Or
Well,
former.
Yeah, I mean, that's what something I guess in retrospect, I regret is I went from tech into owning a shop, and, and if I could have, I probably would have worked a few years in retail in a shop to learn the ropes and then open my place. But
Well,
because I think the experiences, you cobble together from that would have been great.
but
yeah.
like
Unfortunately,
to
I
the
just had Mike.
but even like, looking back at Dave, right? Dave, you built, even with, even maybe you didn't have that experience with other retailers, you built this community in the cycling world in our area that is unmatched by anybody. I mean, think about the group rides and, your passion and love for riding and racing. It's infectious, and it's still out there today. So,
Mm,
even though maybe you didn't have that other retail part of it, you brought something, real
yeah,
special to the bike industry or this area. So we all,
yeah,
have to be
For
thankful for
sure.
that.
yeah. Thank you, thank you. Now I'm gonna get all misty.
Hey, let's not forget patience too, because he's very patient, and he has, he's willing to do, let's face it, like pretty mundane shit in the spirit of trying to get somebody into it.
Right.
Whereas, as a cyclist and as a family person, you kind of have to get time management is really everything. And to take your time to take away from like what would be like a good ride. Let's just say you're either going to go do this killer ride, or you're going to go nurture somebody along for 15 miles at a just a dog shit pace. Uh, you know,
Right.
I don't have that in me. It's like, man, no thanks. But Dave's turned a lot of casuals into cyclists, and that's definitely a skill that is appreciated by the community at large for sure.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy to do for
All right,
sure.
let's talk about you riding now. So you've retired from the shop. You still have you got a couple of homes. You got a couple of amazing off-road vehicles, adventure vehicles. You're living the baller life, and the bike is now back in the program. You shed a bunch of weight. You look terrific, and
Thank you.
so let's talk about how you're getting back into riding, and what your schedule's like with that.
So I haven't seen
Yeah.
you, Chris. How much weight did you shed? You said earlier
Uh
this was an XL t-shirt.
yeah, so I think I shed nearly 20 pounds, and
Yeah,
I
buddy.
still have I still got some to go, but yeah,
Wow.
it'll get there. It'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um but yeah, so yeah, uh I think I kind of lost that lust for the bike, over those years, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of drilling it. And so I'm glad to see that it's, coming back and feeling good on the bike. I've definitely hit some obstacles. I had a pretty bad saddle sore for a while. Uh, and now I got back on the bike and my knee's hurting. So, kind of the ebbs and flows of that. So I got a bike fit with Andrew Weber next week. So
Oh, all right.
yeah.
He'll
And I'm
get you
going
on
to
You
those.
know him?
160 cranks.
I was gonna say he's gonna get you on them short
Oh
cranks.
God.
Yeah.
You guys are all drinking. You're all drinking the Kool-Aid.
I haven't tried it yet. But I'm gonna
Yeah,
try it this winter. Once I get my Zwift set up again, I've got that 105 bike. I'm gonna buy some Praxis shorty cranks and just
right.
do some testing and see if I got to change my whole program on all my bikes. It's a big endeavor
Yeah.
to switch it out. But
Well, even going from 170s to 165s, I felt for me personally, I felt a huge difference in my snap. Like if I was going to bridge a gap on a group ride, I could pop off the group much quicker without towing, without that slow acceleration and towing someone in. And
yeah.
I'm definitely a believer in the shorter cranks.
So do you have aspirations to get back to any type of event riding or races or anything like that? Or is it more just, I just going to ride my bike and have fun with it?
Yeah, I want to be real about it. I just want to start off riding my bike again, but my wife's always catching me watching NorCal cycling videos on YouTube. It's like race perspective. I'm just like, oh man, but you
Yeah.
watch the Cat 1-2 pros, and I'm just like, man, I can't, those guys are so fast. I can't even believe that I used to race competitively at that level, and
Right.
Right.
can I ever get back there? I don't know, but I just take 1 mile at a time.
Well,
So
you don't
you've
have,
done it you've done it the other way around though. See, a lot of us right now we've gotten into these gravel things, and so we go to these gravel events and we look around and there's all these adventure vans and all these people like have gone there the night before and
yeah.
they're sleeping in their vans and then they get up and do the race. And me, like a schmo, I've driven 4 hours to get there because I don't have a van. Now you got the van, you're going the other way. But so we
Yeah.
buy bikes and get into the event, then we buy the vans. You got the van, now you just got to go up and show up at these events.
I just gotta start showing up, yeah, which I've thought
Yeah.
of for sure. Yeah, that'll be the way to
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, I don't, you could race and not, or, not have to be at that level. There's all kinds of different levels of racing. And with
Yeah,
gravel, the thing that's kind of fun with gravel is a lot of times they just kind of throw you out there it's like a mass start and everybody just kind of settles in and you just do what you do. I always approach the gravel events like this is going to be just a cool adventure. And, we'll just see how it shakes out. Now that it used to be with the gravel events, a schmo like me could show up and do pretty good. But now, you got like all these pro racers are retiring
right.
from world tour racing and now they're going to race gravel. It's like,
yeah,
Right.
okay, well, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different thing altogether, but the experiences are still, they're fantastic.
they're the best.
The venues and just being on many times you're on these closed courses that you can never ride. It's all
Right.
arranged for that specific day, and you get access to these areas where it's just, we're fortunate to live in Northern California where it's just so beautiful and a lot of land to explore.
Right.
So
Well, we'll see. I don't know. It's like
yeah,
I've always, anytime I've done something like, well, if I'm riding my bike, like I always want to be the best, right? Like
yeah,
that's what I enjoyed about bike racing, right? It's like I want to be very competitive. I wouldn't be just happy being a Cat 4,
yeah,
like or same thing with my business. I'm just not happy with, being just kind of an average shop. It's like, how can I be the best shop that I can possibly be?
yeah.
And so I think we'll see if that's what happens with getting back on the bike or not. But
Mm-hmm.
take it one
Yeah,
step
Well,
at a time.
you're type
you're
A.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you have too many hobbies. See, you play guitar, and then you ride your bike. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know how you
Focused,
fit it
damn it.
all in.
Well,
Yeah,
I
Right.
know
focus.
you're on this Stoic philosophy in that lane. I've been studying it myself, and
Yeah.
I'm I'm reading the book, The Daily Stoic, that you recommended. But
Okay.
one of their tenets is there's external forces and there's internal forces. And you just
Yep.
have to focus on those internal forces because those are the ones that you can control. The external stuff you can't control. So maybe
Exactly.
take some of that Stoic philosophy and attach it to doing some bike events. And, then
Exact.
maybe it could help get you out of that type A, I got to be the best, or the fastest
I'm
guy,
I'm a
So
work in
what's this?
progress. See, I've been
Yeah.
reading this morning.
Oh, the
That
obstacle is the way.
goes the
Oh,
way.
nice.
Yeah. So yeah.
How far into
Yeah.
that are you?
I'm almost halfway, but I just finished one of his other books. But
What do
yeah,
you think
it's
of
good.
it so
It's
far?
uh, I wish I had access to something like that when I was in retail because I feel like having something like that you're trying to achieve, as far as yourself, because you're just in control of yourself, but just to ground me and just kind of like see things more level-headed and not be so hot or, tempered.
Yeah.
I think that could have helped me in my
Hmm.
relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Back up. The Daily Stoic is the one that. What's this?
Yeah.
What's
The
the other
Daily
book?
Stoic's interesting because the way the guy, so the Stoic philosophers speak in a certain way, and it's almost like you'd want to write it down almost like I listen to it, and so you can really decipher it and break down their philosophy. But what in the Daily Stoic, what the guy does is he reads the philosophical quote from one of the great philosophers, and then he puts it into practical modern terms. Like he'll use analogies that are current in today's world. And I think it's Ryan Holiday. Is that right?
Yeah, Ryan Holiday. Yeah.
Ryan Holiday is the author. And yeah, it's been really good. And I'm getting a lot out of just the Stoic philosophy in general. I find it really helpful. And every once in a while, like I'll catch myself being angry about something, and then it's just like, did I really need to be
Yeah.
angry about that? And
Well, yeah, like I hit a maybe a few months ago, I hit like a wall. Like, what am I doing? I'm retired. I don't, I'm not working at the same level I was, and I just kind of hit this mental wall, like a breakdown, and then I kind of ran across Ryan Holiday, and that really just kind of helped level me out. Just really was super helpful as far as regrounding myself.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things in the line of the obstacle is the way, and I talked about this once before, I think, on the podcast, but there's this guy Jocko Willenick, and he's like a former Navy SEAL, just a badass guy, and he has this thing. It's just good. That's his answer whenever there's a problem. Good,
Yeah.
and because it's going to force you to figure it out. And like he uses military analogies where he'll say, "Oh, we're not getting the high-tech gear we need for the operation. Good. That's going to make us better. We're going to be more resourceful. We got to let's
Right.
figure this out. How are we going to do it without the gear that we need?" And then, oh, so-and-so's got this issue. Good. Well, okay, we're a man down. This is going to be good practical training for us. We need to figure out how are we going to get by without this, And so just always kind of like trying to take the obstacle and turn it into a way where yes, it's an obstacle, but it could also be something that helps you in the big picture. When you have all the stuff, you're going to be that much better. And I kind of
Right.
feel like
Yeah.
that's what retail is going through right now. Bicycle retail specifically is going through that right now, where everything's really tough. It's super challenging. Retailers are looking at their P&Ls, they're looking at their balance sheets, they're looking at all these different things, scrutinizing their business unlike they've ever done, because they have to. And then once it starts to come back, they're going to be that much better because they've gone through this process, even though no one in bicycle retail is saying good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, yeah, you got to look at these. This is, like you said, this is an opportunity, and you have to be willing to change because the industry is changing. And so, to just kind of bury your head in the sand and not take in, what's happening and evolving. And there's tools out there. There's store design tools. There's people out there like the guys at Three Dots, who helped us redo our store. There's people that can help you. There's like the Man Group who can help you with staff training and the MBDA with their P2 group to help you with to reevaluate your KPIs and network more. There's tools that are out there for other retailers, and you just have to be open to looking for those to help you.
yeah.
I don't think I've used that, but I do remember. Hopefully, this isn't repetitive, Mike. But who's the guy that founded Electra Bikes? He used to work at Giant. He worked at every retailer on the planet.
I don't.
Get pass?
Big.
No. You're talking about Beppo and Benno were the guys that founded Electra, but
Well,
they
maybe he
didn't
was the
work at
guy that
Giant.
he was the guy that built it up, then I think, and sold it to Track or something. Anyways,
Oh man.
we're at. I'll never forget. We're on my first IBD conference I went to. He's on a panel, and the panel is being hammered by everyone in the audience about online sales and all this. And like one guy would say, well, Giro, the guy from Giro is like, look, there's nothing we could do. You can't control pricing in Europe. I can't, but. And okay, great. So then they move on to the next guy, and the same question comes up. What are you going to do about online? And you're killing us, and we're going to die. Our businesses are going to die. And I remember this guy was sat there for a while. He was really silent. And then he just yells out, chocolate chip cookies. And the room goes silent. And he's like, have you ever thought about having chocolate chip cookies so that when people come into your store, you give them a chocolate chip cookie, and they want to come back to your store? And it was very evident. Business, what he was saying is, you guys have to rethink, you have to evolve, you have to adapt. And all these guys were just digging in their heels going, no, just stop selling online. That's the answer.
Right. Right.
So that line always, it just struck me. And as stupid as it may have been, I'm like, yeah, that's the deal. We've got to change our business model.
I know who you're talking about. And it's killing me that I can't come up with a name.
Kevin Cox?
Kevin Cox. Yes.
Could be.
Kevin Cox. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was definitely Kevin Cox. And he's the kind of guy, I mean, talk about balls. Like, there's this whole big discussion, and this guy just blurts out chocolate chip cookies. Everybody's looking at him like he's a lunatic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I think I'm the only one in the room that gets what he's saying, right? Yeah. I mean, it was just like, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, you got to embrace the change, right? That obstacle, it's the way. You got to work with it.
Well, and like we were talking about earlier, the IBD, I think the IBDs are getting stronger, and they're developing different skills. They're understanding the importance of the mechanic at a level that many of them hadn't previously, because of these company stores that are coming in, and they're getting these people that walk through their door and they're saying, I was at this other shop and they didn't even know how to do this, and they couldn't help me with that or whatever. And so the IBDs are sharpening their tools, and they're getting better. And I think the future of the IBD is very solid. But definitely be willing to, you threw out all those different things, but also Chat GPT. Yeah. I just looked at a business plan that was fully created by Chat GPT, and I was amazed at the business. I was like, it was really good. And I asked the person to hand it to me. I said, man, this may be one of the better business plans I've seen. And he goes, oh, well, you could thank Chat GPT. He says, I just plugged in a bunch of data and it spit out this 15-page thing. He says, I went through it and like found a couple things I didn't agree with and took them out, but it was like pretty awesome. So there's a lot of tools out there, and just got to keep evolving as a retailer. All right. Well, listen.
So listen. I'm practicing this a little bit now.
Okay.
I got to go because I got to get on a ride, and I'm just thinking when someone else's SRAM battery dies, the answer is good.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Standing around how to get figure out how to get up that hill without it.
Oh no! I can see this guy next to me. My battery died, and I'm just gonna look at him and go, "Good."
Good. Yep.
Yeah. I like the answer.
All right. Well, listen, Chris, thanks so much for joining us, and
thanks for having me.
I know we'll probably have you back on again as a guest from time to time, guest host. As Dave or I are not available. I know you mentioned that you'd be willing to help us out. So those out there listening, you might hear more from Chris here in the future, but
we'll interview him after his first gravel event.
Yeah, right.
That'd be good.
How that went.
That would be good. Yeah, maybe we could, you and I. So I'm shifting my cycling goals next year, and I'm going to do more events next year. So that's kind of my thing. So good. Maybe we can get you to join us and at some of these events that we're going to do, and just it'll be a good time. Yeah,
definitely.
All right. Well, if people want to follow along with you, do you care? Do you want to share your social media, or you want to just gotta keep it private?
No, yeah. I have my Instagram. It's not private, so it's C Padavana on Instagram. So yeah, definitely
C Padavana, right? He's got a bitchin' van that is, I would be happy to live in. It's that kind of van. And then and he's also got this killer off-road. What is it? Forerunner.
Yeah, my Forerunner, yeah.
Yeah. But and he plays a good guitar. There's all kinds of good content on there. You see some bike pics here and there. We got to get you off the T and on the G. That's something that we've got to work on. But
we'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. All right. Before we get out of here, though, I want to say special shout out to a new subscriber. We've got Mike Crow. So Mike Crow,
Woo!
thank you so
Welcome,
much
Mike.
for subscribing. You're now officially on the wall of fame of the Cycle Jerks podcast. And we appreciate you very much. And if you're interested, if you like what we're doing and you want to subscribe, you can go to cyclejerks.buzzsprout.com, hit the subscribe button, and then you can get a shout out too. And then if you don't want to subscribe, you still want to help us out, you can just give us a nice a good review. A 5-star review helps us with the algorithms and whatnot. I don't even know all the details in Cyberland, but yeah, that definitely helps us. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, gentlemen. Pleasure as always.
Thanks for having me.
Well, later.
All right.
All right, guys.